On the night of August 14, 2016, in a quiet suburban neighborhood of Phoenix, Arizona, a 911 call shattered the silence. A frantic woman's voice pleaded for help, her words barely coherent between sobs. "There's blood everywhere. I think he's dead." Within minutes, police arrived at the scene, a modest two-story house on Willowbrook Drive. The front door was ajar. Inside, a gruesome sight awaited them. A man in his late 30s lay motionless on the living room floor, his white shirt soaked in red. The victim, later identified as Daniel Carter, had suffered multiple stab wounds. The initial assessment suggested a violent struggle had taken place. Detectives combed the house for clues, while forensic teams documented every inch. A kitchen knife, coated in blood, rested near the victim's outstretched hand. Strangely, there were no signs of forced entry. Nothing appeared stolen. Whoever had done this was either let in voluntarily or already inside. Daniel Carter, a software engineer at a local tech firm, lived alone. Neighbors described him as reserved, intelligent, and polite, someone who mostly kept to himself. He had no known enemies. However, investigators soon discovered that behind closed doors, Daniel's life was more complicated than it seemed. His phone records revealed a string of heated messages exchanged with an unknown number just hours before his death. The texts suggested an argument, though the nature of the dispute was unclear. Police traced the number to Emily Parker, Daniel's ex-girlfriend. Emily, a 29-year-old freelance writer, was brought in for questioning. She admitted to seeing Daniel that evening, but insisted she had left hours before the murder. "We talked, we argued a little, but I swear, when I walked out, he was alive," she told detectives. Her alibi was shaky. Security cameras from a gas station a few blocks away showed Emily purchasing cigarettes at 11:42 p.m., just 20 minutes before Daniel's estimated time of death. Her clothes, car, and belongings were thoroughly examined, but no blood was found. While Emily remained under suspicion, police pursued other leads. Daniel's work colleagues revealed he had recently filed a formal complaint against a coworker, Mark Holloway. The complaint accused Mark of professional sabotage, though specifics were unclear. Detectives interviewed Mark, who admitted to workplace conflicts with Daniel, but denied any involvement in his murder. He claimed to have been home all night, alone, with no one to verify his whereabouts. With two potential suspects, but no solid evidence, investigators faced a frustrating deadlock. But then, an unexpected breakthrough emerged. A hidden security camera across the street had captured a blurry figure leaving Daniel's house at 12:05 a.m. The grainy footage from the neighbor's security camera wasn't perfect, but it provided a crucial lead. The shadowy figure exiting Daniel's house at 12:05 a.m. was roughly 5'10" in height, wearing dark clothing and moving with urgency. Unfortunately, the poor lighting made it impossible to discern defining facial features. However, investigators noticed something intriguing. The figure carried what appeared to be a bag or jacket, possibly containing the murder weapon or other evidence. This discovery renewed interest in Emily and Mark, as both fit the general description. Detectives decided to re-interview Emily. This time, they pressed her about the gas station footage. Initially, she maintained her innocence, but under increased scrutiny, her story began to shift. I did go back to Daniel's house," she admitted, hesitating. "But it was just to talk. I left again, I swear." Her revised timeline now placed her at the scene within the crucial time frame. But was she telling the whole truth? While detectives debated their next steps, forensic analysts delivered a game-changing revelation. DNA found beneath Daniel Carter's fingernails did not match Emily Parker. Instead, it belonged to an unidentified male. With Emily seemingly ruled out as the killer, attention turned back to Mark Holloway. Investigators obtained a warrant for his DNA, comparing it to the sample from Daniel's fingernails. The results? A perfect match. When confronted, Mark initially denied everything, claiming he had never been to Daniel's house that night. But the forensic evidence was damning. Faced with irrefutable proof, his demeanor changed. His face tightened, his voice grew shaky. "This is a mistake," he muttered, but the panic in his eyes betrayed him. Police arrested Mark Holloway on suspicion of murder, but one question remained: what had truly happened that night? Inside the stark interrogation room, Mark Holloway sat with his arms crossed, his jaw clenched. Across the table, Detective Reynolds leaned forward. "Mark, we have your DNA under Daniel's nails. That means there was a struggle. That means you were there. Do you want to explain that?" Mark exhaled sharply, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "I don't know how that's possible. Maybe we shook hands earlier that day. Maybe." Reynolds cut him off. "That doesn't explain defensive wounds. It doesn't explain why Daniel fought back." For hours, Mark refused to admit anything. He cycled through denial, frustration, and silence. But when detectives played back the security footage from the neighbor's camera, showing his approximate build leaving Daniel's house, his resolve began to crumble. Finally, he spoke. "Okay, I was there," he admitted, "but I didn't kill him." According to Mark, he had gone to Daniel's house that night to confront him about something personal, something that had been eating away at him for weeks. "It was about Emily," Mark said. "I knew he was seeing her behind my back." Mark claimed the conversation turned heated, and Daniel shoved him. That's when things got physical. "Yeah, we fought. But I swear, when I left, he was still alive." Detectives weren't buying it. "You expect us to believe that you just walked away? That someone else just happened to come in after you and kill him?" "That's exactly what I'm saying," Mark insisted. But the evidence painted a different picture. There were no signs of forced entry, no indications that another person had entered after Mark. And the murder weapon? Still missing. As investigators worked to solidify their case, they uncovered a crucial new detail: Mark's phone records. At 12:07 a.m., just 2 minutes after the security camera captured a figure leaving Daniel's house, Mark's phone pinged a nearby tower. Then, in the following minutes, his location data showed movement toward a secluded park near the river. Could this be where he had discarded the murder weapon? Police organized a search, scouring the riverbanks. And after hours of painstaking effort, they found it: Daniel Carter's missing kitchen knife, buried in the mud. The blade was wiped clean, but forensic specialists still found traces of blood in the grooves of the handle. A preliminary test confirmed it was Daniel's. The evidence against Mark was overwhelming. Detectives had the DNA, the security footage, the phone records, and now the murder weapon. But Mark still refused to confess. As his trial date loomed, the public became more invested in the case. Theories swirled online. Some believed Mark was guilty beyond doubt. Others speculated that there was more to the story, an unseen hand pulling the strings. But one thing was certain: the trial was going to be explosive. The courtroom was packed. Journalists, true crime enthusiasts, and members of the public all gathered to witness the trial of Mark Holloway. The prosecution wasted no time painting a damning picture of the accused. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," the prosecutor, Sarah Whitmore, began, pacing before them. "This was not a crime of passion. This was premeditated murder. The evidence is undeniable. Mark Holloway brutally killed Daniel Carter because of jealousy, and then he tried to cover it up." She laid out the prosecution's key points: the DNA under Daniel's nails, the security footage, the phone records, and the recovered murder weapon. Then, Whitmore introduced the prosecution's star witness, Emily Roberts. Emily, the woman at the center of this tragic story, took the stand hesitantly. Her eyes darted between Mark and the prosecutor before she took a deep breath. "Emily, how would you describe Mark and Daniel's relationship?" Whitmore asked. "They were friends," Emily replied. "At least they used to be. But things changed when Mark found out that Daniel and we were seeing each other." Emily admitted that Mark had been furious when he found out, but she insisted he wasn't a violent person. He was hurt, yes, but murder? That's not him. The prosecutor wasted no time dismantling her statement. "Emily, is it true that on the night of the murder, Mark sent you a message saying, 'I'm going to fix this once and for all'?" Emily nodded reluctantly. "Yes, but I didn't think—" "You didn't think he meant murder?" Whitmore interrupted. "Even though he was angry? Even though he blamed Daniel for what happened?" Emily fell silent. Mark's defense attorney, James Holloway, his older brother, approached the jury with a calm but determined presence. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "this case is built on assumptions. Yes, Mark was there. Yes, he and Daniel fought, but that doesn't mean he's a killer. He argued that there was no direct evidence proving that Mark had committed the murder. Yes, the prosecution found the murder weapon near where Mark had been that night, but can they prove he was the one who hid it there? He called a forensic expert to the stand, who confirmed that while Mark's DNA was under Daniel's nails, no fingerprints were found on the knife itself. If my client was so reckless as to leave his DNA at the scene, why would he be careful enough to wipe the weapon clean? The defense also introduced an alternative theory that someone else had a motive to kill Daniel, someone the police had ignored in their rush to convict Mark. The tension in the courtroom grew. Whispers spread through the gallery. Was it possible that Mark was telling the truth? But the prosecution had one last piece of evidence, one that would change everything. Just when it seemed like the defense had created enough doubt, the prosecution revealed its most damning piece of evidence: Mark Holloway's voice. We obtained an audio recording from Daniel Carter's smartwatch, Prosecutor Whitmore announced, her voice steady. It recorded the last moments of his life. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Even Mark stiffened in his seat. He had not been aware of this recording. The judge allowed the jury to hear the file. The courtroom fell silent as the playback began. At first, there was shuffling, maybe Daniel moving, maybe someone else in the room. Then, voices. "Mark, stop! You're taking this too far." Daniel's voice was unmistakable, frantic, fearful. Then, another voice, low, angry. "You took everything from me. You don't get to win." A struggle, heavy breathing, a loud crash. Then, silence. The audio ended, but the tension in the courtroom remained thick. The jury members exchanged glances, their expressions dark with realization. "This," Whitmore said, turning back to the jury, "is the voice of a murderer." Mark's attorney immediately objected, questioning the authenticity of the recording. "This recording only proves that an argument occurred," he argued. "It does not prove that my client committed murder." But the damage was done. The prosecution had placed doubt in the minds of the jury. The judge adjourned for the day. The court would reconvene in the morning, and the trial would soon reach its conclusion. Outside the courthouse, reporters scrambled to broadcast the latest development. News stations ran headlines: "Shocking audio evidence in Holloway murder trial." "Final nail in the coffin? Prosecution unveils damning recording." Public opinion was shifting. Social media exploded with theories. Some believed Mark was guilty beyond a doubt. Others suspected the recording had been tampered with. A few even suggested a cover-up, that someone else had framed Mark and planted the audio. Conspiracy forums dissected every detail of the trial. Was the smartwatch evidence truly reliable? Could AI have been used to manipulate the recording? The next day, the court would reconvene for closing arguments. The fate of Mark Holloway was about to be decided. As the courtroom settled the next morning, Mark's attorney, Jonathan Ellis, knew he had to dismantle the impact of the prosecution's recording. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," Ellis began, stepping towards them with measured confidence, "let's talk about reasonable doubt." He gestured towards the prosecution's table. "They want you to believe that a single audio clip, a clip with no video, no timestamps beyond what they claim, proves guilt." Ellis paced. "But what did we actually hear? A heated argument? Yes. Tension? Absolutely. But proof of murder?" He turned back to the jury. "No, not beyond a reasonable doubt." He played the clip again, stopping at the most critical moment. "Listen carefully," he instructed. "You hear, 'You took everything from me.' But do we know who said it?" The courtroom remained silent. Ellis continued, "The prosecution assumes it's Mark. But I ask you, why would my client, a man with no history of violence, suddenly commit murder in such a reckless way?" He then introduced his own expert witness, Dr. Elaine Carter, an audio forensics analyst. "Dr. Carter," Ellis asked, "is there a chance this recording has been altered?" Dr. Carter adjusted her glasses. "Yes," she said firmly. "Audio can be edited, manipulated, or even generated using AI." Murmurs rippled through the audience. Ellis seized the moment. "And did you find inconsistencies in this recording?" Dr. Carter nodded. The sound profile suggests multiple layers of noise, inconsistent with a single natural recording. There's a possibility that this was tampered with. Gasps echoed in the courtroom. The defense had struck a nerve. Prosecutor Whitmore wasted no time. Dr. Carter, isn't it true that no major forensic lab has flagged this recording as fraudulent? Dr. Carter hesitated. Correct. Whitmore cut her off. So, despite the defense's theories, there's no actual proof that this recording was altered? Dr. Carter sighed. Not conclusively, no. Whitmore turned to the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, don't let the defense distract you with what-ifs. The facts remain. Mark Holloway was in that apartment. He was the last person with Daniel Carter, and now Daniel is dead. Ellis objected. Speculation. The judge allowed it. Whitmore drove her point home. We don't need theories. We have evidence. The tension in the room was palpable. The case was about to reach its climax. As the trial neared its climax, the defense called their final witness, Eleanor Carter, Daniel's younger sister. She hesitated as she took the stand. Her hands trembled slightly as she was sworn in. Ellis approached gently. Eleanor, I know this is difficult, but can you tell the court about your last conversation with Daniel? Eleanor nodded, her voice quiet but firm. He was worried. He said he felt like someone was watching him. Murmurs swept through the gallery. Ellis pressed on. Did he say who? Eleanor swallowed. No, but he mentioned he didn't trust someone close to him. Ellis let the words sink in before continuing. Eleanor, did Daniel ever express fear of Mark Holloway? She hesitated. No, not exactly. Ellis nodded. But you're certain he was afraid of someone? Yes. Ellis turned to the jury. Members of the jury, this is crucial. The prosecution wants you to believe this was a crime of passion. But what if there was someone else? Someone we haven't even considered? Whitmore stood immediately. Objection. Speculation. The judge ruled, sustained. Counsel, keep your questioning relevant. Whitmore wasted no time in cross-examining Eleanor. Miss Carter, Whitmore began, her tone sharp. You say Daniel was afraid of someone. Did he ever name Mark Holloway? Eleanor shook her head. No, Whitmore nodded. Yet you sit here and let the defense create doubt, when in reality, the only person in that apartment with your brother that night was Mark Holloway. The courtroom felt charged. Whitmore let the silence linger before delivering her final blow. The defense can spin stories, but facts don't lie, and the facts tell us that Mark Holloway is guilty. The jury shifted uncomfortably. Both sides had played their best cards. Now, it was time for the final verdict. The jury was excused to deliberate. Outside the courtroom, reporters swarmed, cameras flashing, microphones thrust forward. Speculation was rampant. Would Mark Holloway be convicted, or had the defense sown enough doubt? Inside the jury room, tension was thick. I just don't know, one juror admitted, rubbing his temples. The evidence is strong, but the defense raised good points. Another juror, an older woman, sighed. We have to be sure beyond a reasonable doubt. Arguments broke out. Some believed the prosecution had proven its case. Others felt uneasy about the lack of direct evidence. Hours passed. The judge ordered them to keep deliberating. Finally, after 16 hours, they reached a decision. Back in the courtroom, everyone held their breath. The foreman stood, unfolding the paper. In the case of the State versus Mark Holloway, on the charge of murder, we find the defendant. A pause. Guilty. Gasps erupted. Mark Holloway's mother broke into sobs. His attorney closed his eyes, exhaling sharply. Whitmore remained expressionless. Justice had been served. Ellis looked down. He had done everything he could. The judge turned to Mark. You are hereby sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Mark's face remained blank. It was over. Or was it? Public reaction was immediate. Some felt justice had been done. Others believed Mark had been railroaded. Conspiracy theories flooded the internet. Had the real killer gotten away? Was Mark a scapegoat? Investigative journalists began digging. Some former detectives whispered about missing evidence. And then, 5 years later, a shocking revelation would shake everything. A forgotten piece of DNA evidence, overlooked in the original investigation, would emerge. And it wouldn't match Mark Holloway. It would match someone else. Someone the police had never even suspected. But that is a story for another time. 5 years after Mark Holloway's conviction, a forensic scientist working on cold cases stumbled upon an anomaly. An untested blood sample from the crime scene had been stored improperly and overlooked. It was finally tested against national databases. The result? A match. But not to Mark Holloway. It belonged to Daniel Brooks, a convicted felon with a history of violent offenses. Detectives reopened the case. How had Brooks' DNA been at the scene? Had he been overlooked in the original investigation? Pressure mounted. The media caught wind. Wrongfully convicted. Headlines screamed. Public outcry surged. Had the justice system failed Mark Holloway? And if so, what happened the night of the murder? Detectives tracked down Daniel Brooks. At first, he denied everything. But then, one damning detail emerged. A witness previously afraid to speak came forward. "I saw him that night," the witness claimed. "Near the house. He looked nervous." Brooks' alibi crumbled. Faced with DNA evidence and witness testimony, Brooks confessed. He had been robbing the house when the victim walked in. A struggle ensued. One fatal mistake and a life was lost. Mark Holloway's attorneys fought for a retrial. Prosecutors resisted. No one wanted to admit an innocent man had spent 5 years in prison. But the new evidence was undeniable. The judge had no choice. Mark Holloway's conviction was overturned. After 1,025 days behind bars, he walked free. Tears streamed down his face. His mother embraced him, sobbing. Justice had taken too long, but finally it had arrived. Mark Holloway's release was bittersweet. Yes, he was free, but he had lost 5 years of his life. His career? Gone. His relationships? Strained. The world had moved on without him, but the fight wasn't over. His legal team pushed for compensation, demanding justice for the years stolen from him. Meanwhile, Daniel Brooks faced trial for the murder. This time, the evidence was ironclad. DNA, a confession, a witness. The jury deliberated for only 3 hours. Verdict: guilty. Brooks was sentenced to life in prison, but Mark Holloway, he had to rebuild from nothing. News outlets swarmed the case. Documentaries were produced. Wrongfully convicted, the Mark Holloway story. Talk shows invited him on. How had the justice system failed him so completely? Experts debated, could this happen again? How many innocent people were behind bars right now? Mark Holloway became an activist fighting for others like him, a symbol of hope and a warning. But deep down, one question haunted him. Would he ever truly reclaim his life? Mark Holloway tried to go back to normal, but what was normal anymore? The job market was brutal. 5-year employment gap. No one wanted to take a chance on him. His name was still linked to the case. Some people still doubted his innocence. Others whispered behind his back. He started therapy. The nightmares didn't stop. Bars, handcuffs, that cold, dark cell. Every night he woke up drenched in sweat. Mark's legal team filed a wrongful conviction lawsuit. The police had rushed to judgment, ignored key evidence, faked witness statements. It was an undeniable failure of justice. The city settled, but money couldn't fix everything. Could it fix his life? Some people supported Mark. Others said he must have done something to deserve it. The internet argued. News channels debated. The truth? It didn't matter anymore. His reputation was permanently damaged. Mark used part of the settlement money to move out of state. A fresh start, a new identity. He cut ties with old acquaintances, changed his phone number, avoided social media entirely, but paranoia never left him. Was that stranger at the grocery store looking at him? Did his new co-workers know? Trust was shattered. He felt like a ghost in his own life. Years later, an investigative journalist dug deeper. A retired cop admitted there were things we couldn't say back then. New forensic methods revealed inconsistencies. DNA evidence had been mishandled. A crucial piece of the case, an anonymous tip, was traced back to an ex-cop. Someone had framed Mark from the start. The real killer? He was never found. Mark Holloway's case became a lesson, a textbook example of failed justice. They say innocent until proven guilty. But sometimes public opinion decides first. And the system, it doesn't always protect the innocent. Mark's story faded from headlines, but never from his mind. His trust in the system shattered. His name forever linked to a crime he never committed. His freedom, a fragile illusion. Some still whispered guilty behind his back. Others believed he was a victim. But in the end, the truth no longer mattered. Justice is supposed to be fair. But what happens when it isn't? How many others have suffered the same fate? How many are sitting in cells right now for crimes they never committed? Maybe we'll never know. And that is another chapter in the Dark Chronicles. If you found this case as unsettling as we did, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into the world's most chilling mysteries. Until next time, stay vigilant.